People sometimes misunderstood. Politics is not necessarily government. Politics is how we communicate and how the world operates. I'm taking your history because it's interesting.
What are the opportunities that you immediately see? Like, now I want to do this. Now that we're here, I have the ability to focus on that. This is where I see value. This is where I want to go.
Once you get a taste of what Washington truly is, and you can make an analogous to the European capitals, the South American capitals, but federal politics is a different animal. Of the construction phase, you must be innovative, you must be forward thinking, you must do stuff that has a tie to the past. It doesn't abandon your principles or your character, but it provides something that is unique. Sometimes that can be a little bit misguided in the sense of they will come and say, well, you should do it this way, thinking that that's the only thing that appeals to everybody else in the world, and that's just not the reality of the situation. At one point, there was a snake swimming in the pool. Not a small snake. Maybe that's a precursor to the anacondas now that are in the Everglades. But just watching the difference, it was a view into what America kind of is. I've been saddened by the current state of political affairs globally, but in particular in the United States. That is the biggest problem, and that has trickled down to state and local politics. And I've seen that happen even here. And to me, that's a real loss.
We were brought in here blindfolded. I have no idea what this is.
Literally blindfolded.
Where are we, Tom?
That was the most exciting thing that's happened to me in a long time. I didn't know what was going to happen. Blindfolded, I was like, this is like Meyer Lansky's coming over.
I find that very hard to believe, Fred, that this was the most exciting thing that's happened to you, but I'm going to roll with it.
You guys won't see what's behind there, but I can tell you it's amazing.
Welcome to Miami Unveiled, a show about the city you think you know and the people that you've never truly seen. It's not the skyline, it's not the headlines. This is the real Miami and Coral Gables, bold, bruised, and burning with dreams. Now, Miami's not just a place. She's a force of nature. She carves you, she scars you, and she always tests you. But if you survive her, she makes you part of her story. Today, we tell the story of Tom Prescott. Tom Prescott, I always like to say, is a man of mystery and movement, born of Idaho ranch grit and Italian elegance, shaped by Europe's culture and America's ambition. Boston lecture halls, Washington's corridors of power, federal agencies, presidential campaigns, trade deals, ranching operations, hotels. He's lived a dozen lives more than most people finish one. On the surface, Tom's the numbers man, occupancy, rates, revenues, balance sheets. But those who truly know him see the other side. Like his father, Gene, Tom has empathy and a heart of gold, a quiet generosity, a loyalty to staff, to city, to legacy. He jokes that sometimes he had to compete with the Biltmore for his dad's attention. But in truth, the grand dame of Coral Gables became his inheritance, not just a business, but a destiny. And Miami has tested him. 1992, Hurricane Andrew tears through the city. The unfinished Biltmore opens early to shelter the displaced. Years later, economic challenges, tough negotiations, the difficult path of keeping history alive in a changing market. 2020, a pandemic shuts the doors, demanding reinvention. And in recent years, preservation debates and public scrutiny, moments when stewardship meant facing questions and evolving forward. Yet through every storm, every crisis, Tom has always evolved, because that's who he is. A man who doesn't just endure. He always evolves, he always adapts, he transforms challenges into continuity, and he loves this community. And always, he does so, as I said, as part of this Coral Gables and Miami-Dade community. You'll see him at time capsule ceremonies, honoring first responders, sharing stages with mayors, ambassadors, and the groundskeeper, weaving the hotel into the civic fabric of Miami and Coral Gables. The Prescott family name is written into these walls. Gene before him, a man who poured his soul into restoring a landmark. Tom today, standing in these footsteps, carrying that torch into a second century. International in scope, private yet present, a man who can talk to an Idaho rancher, a farmer, or a president, and mean it the same way. A leader who considers the Biltmore staff his extended family, knowing the soul of the hotel isn't just in the walls, but in the people who keep it alive. This isn't a hotel story, it's a Coral Gables and a Miami story. A story of storms and scars, of legacy and evolution. A story about what it costs to survive here and what it means to keep evolving when the storms don't stop. And if I sound like I understand survival, it's because I'm not just one of your hosts. I've walked these streets, I'm a son of the city too, and I have the scars to show it. And today, alongside my co-host Eugenio, an adopted son of Miami, we welcome not just a guest, but a friend. This is the Miami and the Tom Prescott that you never knew. This is Miami Unveiled, and we're your hosts, Fred Menachem, Eugenio Robaina writer. Today I'm honored to welcome the man who carries Miami's grand dame into her second century, Tom Prescott. Great to see you, my brother. How are you? What's up, man?
Good to see you.
It's great to see you. Thanks for doing this.
Of course.
You're looking very handsome, my man.
I'm trying. Just following your lead.
Great having you.
Woo! Wow, man, that was freaking.
That was very nice. Very nice. I was looking for that guy that you were talking about, and so hopefully I got
Where
him
is he?
for you.
Right, where is he?
So
Right.
What spoke to you about? What spoke to you from that?
Well, first, Fred is always gracious and most kind to say such things. I, of course, liked everything I heard. Everything was truthful. It's just, I'm not one that ever puts myself in the limelight.
Where are we? Like, we were brought in here blindfolded. We have no idea what this is.
Literally blindfolded.
What
right?
is
I
this?
know.
Where are we, Tom?
That was the most by the way, that was the most exciting thing that's happened to me in a long time. I didn't know what was going to happen. Blindfolded, I was like, this is like Meyer Lansky's coming over. Or something.
I find that very hard to believe, Fred, that this was the most exciting thing that's happened to you. But I'm gonna roll with it.
Well, you said I'm not allowed to tell the story.
That's true.
Right.
Well,
Right.
this is one of those spots that we take great pride in, but at the same time, we don't really talk about it. It's a space that's reserved for those kind of within our inner circle, so to say. You guys being some of them.
Wow, I actually am included.
Of course.
Man.
But it's a space that is a throwback to a bygone era. It's a space that you wouldn't find on social media or when talking to folks. It's kind of just something that people know about, and that's it.
Well, I can tell you. You guys won't see what's behind there, but I can tell you it's amazing.
You know, I want to get started. There's so much here because I think that with Tom, look, Gene has been here for a long time. And the funny thing is you've been here as well behind the scenes, but you kind of, Gene, a big personality, and also out of respect for your father, which we all do tremendously. You kind of stayed back and did your thing, but more quietly. And so I really want to talk about the man, Tom, for a moment, because really your career has been fascinating. And in many senses, I not that I'm running hotels, but I think you and I have always had, we've crossed similar paths. So let's go back to a guy, I'm talking to the beginning, from Italian mother to a father who clearly is not Italian, but Idaho ranch. We know that your dad's story, but from Idaho ranches to Europe. I mean, there's been so much. Why don't you kind of just give that trajectory? I call you. Let's stop for a moment because I want to say this: the international man of mystery, the most interesting man in the world. But really, and I say this. I'm joking, but I'm serious. You have a story that you've never really told because we're talking very micro. Biltmore. So let's talk about who's Tom Prescott, man.
Well, that's a tough one to talk about. I actually have dual citizenship, both American and Italian citizenship. That's based upon the fact that my mother is first generation Italian, died several years ago. But when my father met her in Italy, when they were both working for Olivetti at the time, it was a different world back then. It was different politics. It was different business aspects. So my mother actually came here to the United States after meeting this, and here in Miami, we would say a gringo, obviously for Italian, we would say americano, but went over there, came back here. She didn't actually even speak the language very well. Took a leap of faith in a different country entirely, a different way. And you referenced Idaho, which is where my father grew up. And of course, I spent time back and forth going to Idaho, going to New York, coming to Florida, and to watch her navigate those waters of Idaho from Italy was very funny for me, actually growing up. So, but then I spent a lot of time in New York and Florida because obviously my schooling was in the East Coast. But the Idaho is a good grounding in many respects that you don't get in other places like New York or Miami at times, as you pointed out. So that was, and again, remember, this was, I hate to say it, Fred, but this was, the 70s and 80s. So I know we're not supposed to.
We're the same age.
We're not, yeah. Well, let's just say 50s. Let's just say 50s and leave it that way.
The Gen X is like the last generation of the 50s, they say. But so, no, you were finished.
No, so anyway, it's an interesting blend that's not very common as far as I can tell. And then from there coming down, obviously the Miami area, that's also a little bit different from that, not just the traditional Northeastern person that would come down here. So it makes it unique.
But I want to, for a moment, we always, everybody knows about your dad and stuff, but I think it's important because it really speaks to the person that you are. Tell us a drop about your mom, because I don't know. I know of her. I mean, what did you gain from her? What was she like? And it sounds like she really was somebody that really was she had moxie, she had chutzpah, as we say, right? She came to a country very. Tell us about her.
So she grew up obviously toward the end of World War II, and that was and I could only imagine an impactful impression on those of that generation. Came here, took that leap of faith coming with my father, especially when she found out that there was an Idaho background, which, again, I don't know that they even could have placed that on the map at that time. So that was unique and different from her. But what I really liked, I mean, I'd like to think we all love our mother, and she had such a profound impact on me in terms of who I am, just like my father. But she instilled this great kind of like, same way with my father. Mean what you say, do what you say. No need to be passive aggressive or to somewhat, be full of it. Be direct with people. That was her nature. That was something she imparted in me, and I still bring that today. Sometimes some would say to the detriment because they're not used to that. It's a little bit more hand-holding that's needed at times.
Well, that's a beautiful mix of everything that's formed you. Is there something or specific geo that had more of a formative or forging on you? Like, I mean, you have the country, great country living, you have those European roots, you have Miami with that multicultural. Is there something that you feel you have more of an influence, or everything has carried similar weight?
I think that I actually lived in Italy for a while, and when my maternal grandmother was still alive, I would go back and forth between the US and Italy. That was certainly a culture shock at times, but I had my first glass of wine when I was, I think, 11, with my grandmother, and it was no big deal. And it opened up a whole new world to me. The art, the culture, everything was there. So it was very impactful. You don't have as much of that in Idaho, and I'm not saying that to be negative. I'm just saying it's a difference of what's the focus. New York, you had a lot of that. Down here in Florida, but remember that when we first started and the family business first started, it did not have the Biltmore Hotel. Before that, we had the west coast of Florida is where we had our property, and then we had some others up north.
But they were divorced. Your parents got divorced when you were how old?
They were legally separated while I was growing up, and then ultimately divorced when I was older. When I
They
was
were
an
legally
adult.
separate while you were a kid.
Correct.
So you were living also in two
Correct.
worlds, and that couldn't have been easy.
No, but I mean, look, I understand myself being now having been divorced.
There's 15,000 roses at the wedding.
There's,
right.
you fall out of love with people. Fortunately, in my parents' relationship and mine, it was not due to infidelity or something, akin to verbal or physical abuse. So people fall out of love with each other. I believe that you can, love multiple people. I love both of you guys. And so,
I'm kind of turning red. At first I wasn't sure. I remember. So I knew you, and it's probably hard to remember, but over the years I ran into you a lot, but you probably, you were doing your thing. Your dad and I were very close. So I remember this. I'm going to tell that we first came in. I remember, your dad and I are so close that he didn't even tell you. I said, I'm gonna do this interview. He's like, if only for you. So I'll never forget coming in. You were looking at me a bit skeptical right at the beginning, but you fell in love with me quick. I got through you.
You are a tough man not to love, friend. I keep telling you that.
This is special. Right.
So,
and also a tough man to love.
No, well, right. Probably, but that's not my thing to say.
Right, but I'm sorry. I mean, that kind of was a tangent, but I did want to, we talked about divorce and all that, but I was curious about something, and my train of thought went away for a minute, but you're a guy that's experienced so many different parts of the world. And as I see your family, like here, I don't know, there's so many freaking Prescotts. I don't even know who's who, but I met a young lady who works.
She is my cousin's daughter, oldest daughter.
And the hotel's really big, the Prescott Legacy, but I was speaking with her, like I speak with everybody, and we were talking, and I was joking with her, and she said something about, I learned that in Europe. And I was like, it's so interesting because, first of all, your father did not grow up rich, but he grew up also, it was a different time, but educated, class, your dad was involved, granddad was involved with politics. But although people would think Idaho, that very narrow, but your kids, they experience the world, right? Yeah. All of them. Right?
No, and in fact, it is a generational thing. I think more opportunities obviously have availed themselves to that next generation, not just our family, but others. But I do think that my father, at least, recognized that the way out of his small town was through education and hard work. He parlayed that into the successes that he had entirely on his own. Not to suggest that I haven't done so as well, but it was different. Like I had other people that I was introduced to and then could prove myself to, whereas my father did not have that. And I recognize that. And that's a leg up from the last generation. And then hopefully we give that to each one of our successive generations.
And I think, by the way, you also, in a sense, because you grew up, Eugenio, in a world that a lot of, similar in a way, I say the Prescott's in a sense, right? Cattle ranch. You never talk about it, but you also came and did things on your own. You don't rely on your dad's context, this and that. Similar. You went out and you forged your own path. It's similar to what Tom's talking about.
I think it makes you richer.
I think we have this cattle ranching.
We have this glasses and cattle ranch. We had sugarcane plantations and cattle ranch.
Oh, that's what I said.
And it just makes you richer. Like the more, like I think the more you travel and the more you live in different places, the more you learn about yourself rather than the places that you're at. And it gives you those extra sets of colors to the lenses. Yes. And you're able to experience the world just more rich.
I agree.
Now, let me ask you a question, because we're going to get into everything Miami, Biltmore, and beyond. Miami's obviously...
But before I want to talk about his like government stuff.
Yeah. Miami's obviously the love your family chose. You guys are stewards of, something that carries so much weight in the city. But if Miami wasn't an option, where would you live?
Ooh, that's a good one.
That is a good question. I really enjoyed my time. I had initially started, and I know Fred wants to talk about that, when I had government experience, U.S. federal government experience. So I lived in D.C. and then I had moved out to McLean, Virginia. And I really enjoyed McLean, probably because it was an impactful time for I have 3 children, my 2 oldest sons. That was a formative period for their years where I really enjoyed that. However, to raise them, correct. However, when I was working, this was way before that, when I was working in Italy and Rome, obviously at hotels, that was a great, quality of life. It was a great way to enjoy, because the European model, and I'm generalizing here, but the European model compared to the American model is largely, you don't live to work, you work to live. And as a result, you can have a nice balance. You can have that. It's harder here in the U.S., I feel. And again, it's a generalization, but I think it holds true in a lot of industries. But I will tell you, the one thing I miss also, and I wish Miami would be a little bit different on this, is I would like to have more than just one season a year. And I miss that aspect where I could have a changing, whether it be visiting out family in Northern California, going to Europe, going to the DC or New York area. I miss that aspect.
So you can do that. I mean,
you can go away, and I get it. But I'm just saying,
it's not in the same city.
I just, I still have a bunch of sweaters that I don't really use ever at any time, or jackets. So I have to go someplace in order to enjoy that. But you're right. It's probably better to have year-round, warmer weather than colder weather.
I can't stand it. It drives me crazy. But you still have the ranch in Idaho, which
we do.
Thank God.
We do.
So let me ask you a question. From the professional side, we talked a little bit about like the human side. How do you see yourself? And you don't need to be a label or in a box, but like, are you an hotelier? Are you like a civic steward? Are you a business leader? Like, how do you see that? Policy.
International man of...
I like that moniker much better. That's great.
Right. Okay.
Well, but like you, we have backgrounds in politics, and I believe that politics permeates everything, regardless of the industry that you're in. I also have a business and legal background as well. That's useful in my current trade, just like it was in my prior trade. I don't have a one-word moniker for myself.
Nor should you.
I feel the same. By the way,
I don't know how to describe my primary profession is a hotelier, of course, but I still am actively involved in community organizations, in politics. We all have to be, as I mentioned. So if we're just talking about where I spend the majority of my time and focus and attention, it would be in the hotel business, of course.
And so I want to talk a little bit about that part of your life, especially because I relate. That's where you and I really...
Yep, we had cross paths. We crossed paths there.
We have, and I think you mentioned something, politics is everything. And listen, people sometimes misunderstand that word. Politics is not necessarily government. Politics is how we communicate and how the world operates. But you chose to get into government and politics. That was your choice, right?
It was.
That was, and so you always knew that you would end up in the hotel business. But I mean, I think, am I wrong?
No, it's not an incorrect characterization. I always enjoyed the hospitality industry. Growing up in it, you can't avoid it. My sisters and I was the one of the 3 that really took to it, liked to do it when I was not an adult yet. I would come and I would work at my father's hotels just because I found it interesting. I really liked it. And I knew...
Which ones?
This was the Clearwater Beach property,
right. It's a great property.
Staten Island property, which was the only hotel not by the hour when we had it, but that's another story. That's another story. Right. And I really enjoyed that. My sisters it didn't move them the same way. It just didn't. However, I knew that I wanted to try other industries and paths to see and ensure that I wasn't just also being viewed for my own self, but also for others to just, here you go, you just were fortunate to take over your father's business.
Also allows you to bring you more skills to
I agree.
to the table.
I use every aspect of my education, my experiences, just like both of you do, to benefit and better what I currently do now. And that is a rich aspect.
Would you say that Washington and adjacent is where you really sharpen your teeth?
Yes, I would agree with that statement. And I would say, just speaking candidly, as Brett and I have talked about, I do find humorous at times here where local politics, they act as though this is the epicenter of the universe. And I'm like, you guys really don't understand the rest of it. I'm not saying that to be condescending. I'm saying once you get a taste of what Washington truly is, and you can make an analogous to, the European capitals, the South American capitals, but federal politics is a different animal. And as a result of that, it does sharpen you. It does give you perspective that you might not otherwise have had. While all politics is local, focusing on local issues versus looking at it in the aggregate, it can be somewhat limiting.
It's way more complex. Yeah. How would you describe politics? Because everybody has an idea of what that is. But for you, what is?
Well, I've been saddened by the current state of political affairs globally, but in particular in the United States. I think, having had the benefit of working for both a Democratic and Republican administration, and then continuing to work with both political as well as career folks within both, I've been saddened because the time that Fred and I were there, it was a different world. You might disagree with someone vehemently on an issue. We could sit there and we could argue all day long, but we would then stop at the end of the day, go break bread together and work through it for the betterment of the country. And that's not, in my opinion, that's not happening today.
Tip O'Neill, Ronald Reagan.
No, but I'm just saying that is the biggest problem. And that has trickled down to state and local politics. And I've seen that happen even here in Coral Gables. And to me, that's a real loss because we as the United States, again, this is just my opinion, we're an epicenter for, moral good, I thought. And to lose that standing because people look and say, what in the world is going on? That's problematic on so many levels that people don't realize.
We don't need to probe much on this, but why do you think that happened? I always believe it's a pendulum. Like once that pendulum goes so far to one side, then it comes back. But it never really finds itself.
But this time the pendulum's not even right. But this time that's not happening, don't you think? Because usually it's this time it's swinging.
Well, there's no pendulum.
Right.
At this point, there's none left. For better or worse, Donald Trump has left his mark on the political landscape forever. It is adjusted way that people are approaching politics, to how they engage with their fellow, politicians, whether they're from the same party or the opposite party, since there really only is two parties in the United States. And that has left a mark that I'm not sure. I could argue the positives of his administration, his first administration, and what he's doing currently now, but I could also identify the negative, as I could of any other administration. I just have never seen things being handled the way they are now. And I'm not sure that, unlike a traditional situation where a Republican or a Democratic administration, let's say, then goes to a Republican administration, as Fred mentioned, or you mentioned, the pendulum swings a little bit. Sometimes there's an overcorrection and, it has to work its way out. The problem now is that people don't view that there's any reason to go back over there. And it can be toxic in the many respects.
Can I jump in? By the way, before I jump in, I just want to say I'm a bit upset about something. He looks so good, this freaking black on black, and I've got to up my wardrobe. I'm really I'm not feeling. Look at this guy.
Well, it's a combination. It's that. It's the washboard stomach. It's it can be frustrating for the rest of us.
Did you meet my sister yet? No, she not. Anyway, Neil's that. Well, pointing. She said that no, because she said that she's like, watch, Eugenio is going to be written up in Ocean Drive with a what do you call that thing when they do a whatever. They're going to write them up. I don't remember the hell. Okay, anyhow. But back to this, because we're talking politics, but I want to get a little micro for a moment. Not micro, but so I just want to point out, again, it's really important for me during this conversation, that I really want people to see you as the bigger guy than just this guy who's coming in to the Biltmore, because really a lot of the press and things you've been doing is either handling crises, right? Because it's always the case with dealing with this kind of thing, or get involved with your civic involvement, right? It's never, you studied economics and business at BU, Institute of World Politics, International Relations, and by the way, my mom and brother went to GW, but international business at GW. So I want to walk for a moment, because Eugenio was talking about how that really, molded you in politics. And so let's talk for a moment. You worked on 2 presidential campaigns. So it's, you worked for Rahm. You talk about it. I'm taking your history because it's interesting. Like me, both sides, you understand how things work together. One moment before I let you talk, I remember you were talking about how politicians would work together. Look at Alex Pinellas, right? Working with Republicans. As a kid, I hung out with Ted Kennedy, and that's another story. I maneuvered my way into, and very interesting, very smart. And you think Ted Kennedy's so liberal, right? But he was negotiating with Orrin Hatch, right? On healthcare, and that's how things work. But you worked, why don't you start with Rahm Emanuel, with Bush, I mean, all of that stuff.
So in the first was under the Clinton administration. And so I had experience under Rahm Emanuel back before he was sending people dead fish. But let me tell you, it is that time and experience was also very impactful to me. You were asking earlier about things were impactful because of the fact that they sharpened skills. A lot of people might not appreciate his style. Again, remember, Rahm was hard edge. He didn't suffer any fools. If you didn't answer, we were at the cusp of having back then, as you may recall, cell phones and everything else were becoming more ubiquitous.
That's right.
It's right on the edge. He didn't suffer any fools. If you didn't respond back to him within an hour, 2 hours tops, don't bother showing up. That was his philosophy.
But he's direct like you.
Very direct. And I appreciated that. Personally, I thought that's the right way to approach things. It's off-putting to some, but I'd like it. But he did teach me the importance, and he would always say, because it would be a very young crop of us in that office, and he would be like, listen, I'll give you all the rope in the world, but if you hang yourself, it's on you, and if you do anything to hang me, I'll cut the rope and let you fall. I appreciate that. That's very direct. I know exactly where I stand.
So then I want to just quick get through the trajectory. So Rahm was focused on, what was the biggest policy thing that you really focused on in Rahm's office?
Well, he was in political affairs at the time.
Right.
So he was domestic, obviously, more than anything else. So he was focusing at that time. This is when Mac McClarty had also had a brief stint.
Franklin, of course, I know you guys have strong relationships with McClarty.
As the chief of staff.
Right.
Yeah. But he was focused on the domestic issues primarily. And again, like any first-term administration, he was focused on how to get elected to a second term.
So you learned hardcore politics.
Correct.
And then after that, you went to an agency yet? Or
correct. Then I went to the Commerce Department because
under Bush?
No, this was still under Clinton.
Okay.
I went White House, Commerce Department, Agriculture Department, then I was still in there when George W. Bush came because we were dealing with the WTO negotiations.
But he didn't freaking get rid of everything.
No. Nowadays, if you're tagged with this particular person, you're dead. You're out.
So why, though, Ag and Commerce? I mean, you came from, obviously, I know, but it was
the unwritten rule that you can appreciate, but I think a lot of other people don't, is that you work at the White House for the experience, for the connections, not for the money. The supply is so plentiful to staff that little squat building there on Pennsylvania Avenue, but you go to the federal agencies to get better pay, to obviously do a more normalized schedule. By normalized, meaning you're not going 6 to 7 days a week, 20 hours a day, arguably at times.
Right. But
So it's a little
political
more
too. You were both.
correct. But I enjoyed and I wanted to be involved with a number of the international negotiations because, as you pointed out, my background of my family and living over in Europe before I joined the administrations made it interesting to me. So I wanted to negotiate bilateral and multilateral trade agreements.
So, no, please.
Who was the most consequential mentor in politics for you?
Fred Menachem?
I'll say the difference between President Clinton and President Bush. President Clinton,
Which Bush? Let's be clear.
Bush Jr.
George W.
Yeah, and we actually have Jeb Bush, Governor Bush, is here all the time.
Shout out to Jeb Bush. Hey,
very
Jeb.
much so. I think he would have been a fantastic president. I'm sorry that didn't work out, but that's another story.
Well changed.
I think that Clinton's raw intellect is unlike most people. His ability and his insight, natural political instincts, all of those things are stuff that you just don't see on a random person. Whereas President Bush, George W. Bush, a guy's guy, very nice guy, believed in this country and wanted to do good. I would say that I learned more from President Clinton and the people that he had surrounding him than I did from President Bush. But I did still learn some valuable lessons in both, and they have helped sculpt me all the way through life.
Can you break down a little bit more of that intellect and insight that you took from Clinton?
Well,
smart, man.
so I can talk to you about I mentioned before the negotiation on WTO, but like, for example, as we were going through that, China was attempting to accede to the WTO. So we wanted to bring them in, the United States, to bring them into a rule-based organization so that, our farmers could compete fairly on the world stage, that we wouldn't have an undercutting of subsidies or dumping that the Chinese would do or others. So we wanted to expose them to that and provide a fence by which they could not exploit. And then that would be advantageous to the United States because we have some of the best product, whether it be agricultural goods, other services that would, far and exceed others. Remember, the United States represents 4%, 5% now of the world's population. I mean, we must export. We must do things internationally and globally. That was my position then. It's my position now.
So speaking of, this is interesting. I never intended to get into this, but this is what happens. No, I like when this happens because look, obviously it themes Miami, but that's okay. We are all Miami people. China. No, but this is interesting because we're talking about China right now. China, right? We have significant. They're an adversary, of course, and we're dealing with this right economic, and that's what people don't get. They're not, but we're dealing with this right now. From a guy who was in, right? You've been in that world. You understand. This is what makes you such an interesting person. And I'll get the check from you later. But you understand the reality of what we're dealing with at this moment. Yeah. I know obviously you don't have the solution, for everything. But what do you see? What are our challenges? Yeah. And what? What do we need to do right now?
But I will answer that question, but I want to close the loop on your earlier question.
I interrupted my life story.
And the reason why is to answer as to why he had such a brilliant mind. So when we were dealing with that, as you may recall, at that time, the Republican Party was very pro-trade, rule of law, all the kind of, platform issues for them. So we would bring in actually Democratic lawmakers from the House and from the Senate and talk to them about what was the benefit of doing this. And they were more skeptical, somewhat because the unions at the time had a greater control over the Democratic Party. And I remember I was there sitting in the Franklin room, outside of the Oval Office, and it has a nice picture.
Nice picture of you?
No, wow.
Oh, wow, look at that.
Oh,
Tom
and
Prescott.
We're there at the table, and there's the lawmakers. The rest of us staffers are, behind at the walls. And I remember this congressman was saying, I don't think we should do this or that. And it was almost like a Khrushchev moment. Clinton slammed his hand down on it, and he said, "Don't you tell me about this." And then he proceeded to give like an education to all of us in the room about the background, how China came to be, the different dynasties, what it meant.
How long did he talk for?
30 minutes. But all of us, guys, it happened to be mainly men, but guys that had PhDs and everything else, they all looked like they were just there soaking in as much of this education as they could get from him. And the fact that he spoke with such eloquence and brought it all so that it made complete sense to us. At one point, I remember all the members in the room going, "We're with you, Mr. President." And that's how he would do it. So we started doing small gatherings to talk about them. And Fred knows this, Clinton had a unique power that is hard to replicate anywhere else, where when he's talking to you, you are literally the center of his universe. That's how you feel. And he remembers things that I couldn't even believe he would remember. When I saw him not too long ago, because he was down here in South Florida and he was talking with Jeb, and it was a great, to watch the two of them talk. And then he would be like, "Oh, Tom, do you still have that house in McLean?" I'm like, how the hell, of all the things in your head, how do you populate your head with that? But he does that. Then he would see someone and he would talk to them, and he might say, "Oh, did your daughter finish law school? Did she this?" I have not seen that with anybody else, that ability to go back that far.
He is so Clinton. We always end up talking about Clinton. What is the Clinton all the time?
No, but George, I want to be fair.
No, let's go
George
to
W. Bush
is amazing. I love him, by the way.
He is a great guy.
Sweetheart.
And he would be like, "Are you okay? Is everything good?" And he would focus on you as well, but in a different way, in a more empathetic
different
way.
styles.
Yeah.
So what's interesting what you mentioned, about Clinton is that you don't usually see more of that, strong hand, obviously in his public persona, which is fine. He's addressing different types of people. But obviously it makes sense that he has to be that person to truly be effective.
Yeah.
Who? Don't know.
Clinton. I just say that I think that if the election were held, I think he would have a real shot of being reelected to a third term. He would.
Clinton at that point. I learned so much from a lot of presidents. Some I knew, some I didn't. Like Ronald Reagan, I learned tons from. Just like communication. I didn't know. I never got to meet him, unfortunately. But Clinton, a lot of people, history's funny. People forget, the specifics. Clinton was a guy that grew up, let's say, poor in a sense, right? Mother, alcoholic home, lots of things. But he was amazing because he was so brilliant intellectually, but also could sit with a guy at a donut shop. I saw it and just really, first of all, explain things to him in a very complex way, but truly focus on them. He was able to do both. And he truly cares, Clinton. I mean, people forget that,
The similarity between Clinton and Bush Jr., I'm sure Bush Sr., although I didn't know him, my father and grandfather knew them. is that when they have been to here, they will talk to everybody and they will genuinely be interested in hearing, how are you doing? But I don't say we get that from all of our politicians, whether they be a president or not.
And you know what? Although we didn't mean, I went all over the place. By the way, I'm glad that you pointed back to you. See what I did? He's very good at that. I started talking Chinese. He's like, okay, can I finish answering his question? I know, that's fine. It's good. I need that. It's like the teacher. Okay, Fred, redirect. But I did want to say about just, earlier you were talking about the fact that, politicians today, right? That they can't work together. A great example is Clinton. You said watching Clinton and Bush together. They became dear friends after. Clinton Sr., right, Clinton Sr. and Clinton, I'm saying, but the families came together. Yeah. And even Obama, I mean, they all, they respected each other. And the point is that's how it's supposed to be. And that's what we're losing. But you were talking, and then I started with the China thing, but.
No.
But
I mean, we
we want to go on to this.
We do got to move on from this section, but I did want to wrap this up. And I don't know if you want to wrap up with anything else, Fred.
We'll do a quick China thing since I brought it up, and now we didn't get an answer.
But you had to see yourself at a certain point going the whole way in politics.
Sure. I have a number of friends like you do. Was it a tough decision,
or you were like...
No, it wasn't. I mean, I had a number of friends that talked about, should we all run for office? Should we do that kind of stuff? It is an attractive aspect in one way. It's not the path that I wanted to go down. Staying in Washington and doing things there in a non-elected capacity can be very rewarding. Lobbying, I know, is a dirty word at times, but it's fine. At that point, it is. And I just felt that was not the path at that time that I wanted to continue down. And so that made it easy to start to shift over back into the family business. Because remember, while I was doing this, I was also getting all my graduate work done.
So I know we want to shift into new stuff, but I want to ask just two questions. No, I do. Just quickly. No, give it 30 seconds. It's important. We're talking about it. I don't want to let it go.
You want me to synthesize the situation down to 30 seconds?
No, I just want to say, I mean, you were there.
Nobel laureates can't do that. How can I do that?
That's fine, but just as somebody who was there close to the agreements that are being written then, I think it's important.
So China is going, like any country, in my opinion, is going to advance its interests as much as possible. I'm not suggesting they're going to do it at the detriment of others, but it is natural to think that they are looking, and whatever it takes. They have a population issue, which is why I think they reversed their one-child policy.
Right, that's right.
They also have, like India, they focused on the births of boys more than girls. And at a certain point, if you talk to military commanders, as I have, they have explained to me that you have to worry about that kind of stuff because if they don't have enough women, they're going to look to other places by which to go to. That's just a military fact. So militarily, you're dealing with another country that has the world's largest air force. They might not have the marine capability as we do and other countries do, but they're going to focus on that. Where their strength lies is economically. They've reestablished the Silk Road Initiative. They've focused on the fact that they still have our largest holding of treasuries. That leaves us just a little bit. The Straits are another issue. That comes up every once in a while. And I think that what they're looking for, China, in fairness to them, they're not a 4-year player like most U.S. politicians are. They focus on the 40-year, 400-year plan because they recognize that they go back I love America. It's, in my opinion, the greatest country on earth, but it's a young country. It doesn't focus on things the same way that other countries have for millennia. Terms
don't incentivize that way.
That's the problems with democracies. No, I hate to say it, right? Because democracies have to.
Would 10 years have that short limitation?
But only economically, they recognize their heft, and I think that Walmart imports something like 10% of all Chinese goods that come in the U.S. I think goes through Walmart. Like they've recognized where is our product the most needed and desired in the U.S. market. And of course, they're going to continue to focus on the high end, on, electronics, on rare earth materials, on things of that nature. And that's something that in my opinion, we need to be focused and concerned on.
So I know we're going to shift because we need to. We're getting to China, but I just want to say to anybody out there, we're sitting here. What's the name of the speakeasy? I don't even know. Does it have a name? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, excuse me. If I take that out, right. Yeah, so we're sitting in a room here, and it's International Man of Mystery, as I said, Tom Prescott. But just remember, anybody out there in Washington, across the world, across the globe, if you need help solving these issues, these trade issues, these issues from a global perspective, you see 3 guys here. Reach out, Eugenio Robaina, Fred Menachem, Tom Prescott. We're here to help. All right? Just remember that here at the Biltmore Hotel. On that note, I think we need to move on to a lot of stuff, Eugenio, right?
We got into the Biltmore.
That's right. Well, and that is a nice segue only because one of the things where politics has played a role is my father did this, and I firmly believe it, where we have attempted to make the Biltmore the epicenter of political discourse and activity here, whether it be from federal discussions, state, municipal. We've done that here, and we continue to try to do that.
How do you do that?
So partly it's because like anything, it's contacts, right? It's all of the relationships that we have. This is an easy place to do so because we're 15 minutes from the airport. Look, if you're coming here and you want to stay on the beach, you're going to stay on the beach.
Right.
That's fine. But if you're coming because you want an all-encompassing resort that has everything that you can do, from meeting space, old world charm given the historic landmark, a golf course, the world's the largest pool in the continental United States, not the world, let me be fair, as much as I think that, I'm drinking my own Kool-Aid. But it's also an epicenter. It's an epicenter of activity, of wealth, of, backgrounds, diverse in every nature and field. So I think that that's what helps me continue to bring people to this area. So that's what I try to do on a day-to-day basis.
You do it pretty effectively. So at what age did you came back from Washington?
In my 20s.
And was that at the same time that this was starting?
Yeah, so 1992 is when we opened, but obviously the negotiations that had to be undertaken with the Department of Interior, the city of Coral Gables, was all before that.
I know you're probably let's say mid-20s, like 25. You're coming in here. This is taking place. Lease is happening. What are you thinking? Because this is a big commitment.
Well, the first time, I kind of had a similar reaction as my father, the way he described it to me, the first time I came here to see it when it was still closed. And I remember I was like, I didn't realize we had a castle in South Florida. It dominates the skyline. It's the largest and tallest structure in the greater area. And then you have Coral Gables, which prides itself on the canopy cover and the city beautiful and the greenery. So it really stands out amongst the other league of cities in the surrounding area. And I remember thinking to myself, this is incredible. But of course, then I stepped foot inside because we were still undergoing the renovation to get it to the point where they could reopen. And I was like, Dad, I don't have to, be a CEO of a business company. No, this is going to be a money trap. You're going to be dumping money in this all the time. And for a little bit, it did. And Fred alluded to the fact that we started, and then literally, almost like what happened to George Merrick, that founded Coral Gables and opened the Biltmore, a hurricane hits Andrew, which was devastating, a Category 5 that came and sat right on top of Miami. And I remember visions of Dad with the first responders holding, a cord as one of the fire guys was out going to get families outside of Anastasia Avenue because their home had literally been lifted. Andrew was devastating.
I remember friends, guns outside, looters. It was so, okay, let's just now that we're talking about Hurricane Andrews, big story in Miami. I don't think you even realized. So I lived in Galloway Glen, right? But I'd just gone away to college. God, my dad had just, anyway, and you're talking, it wasn't even, the hurricane was so brutal, but what happened was Miami wasn't prepared for it. National Guard. You had, people, insurance companies couldn't even handle it. There were so many adjusters. You had, what do you call it, carpetbaggers, whatever you want to call them, coming down from the north, insurance, robbing everybody, people standing in front of their homes with shotguns, no looters, with signs, because it was so bad. You had, this town turned into, first of all, people taking advantage financially, from out of town. You had, this was, I don't even know how to describe it. So you all, right, war zone. For years. And Biltmore comes in, the same hotel that, what was it, World War II, right? World War II. Okay, so back to that. I just want to give kind of a, please.
But so
Biltmore turned into support.
Correct. And what I thought, and again, I was much younger at the time, so I didn't have as much perspective as I like to think I do now. But I remember sitting there saying, this is the death knell. This is, how do you recover from something like this? And it was arguably one of the best things, again, from this very narrow application of me saying it was one of the best things. It was obviously a tragedy and terrible for a lot of people, but it created something with the Biltmore and a sense of tying the community with the Biltmore together. It became an emergency evacuation center. So people came here and were housed here. They didn't have power anywhere else. We had adjusters in here, as you mentioned, Fred. We had, FPL, type power people in here. So they needed to make this the focal point to get everything up and running right away. We were feeding people. You could see people were just like, if it hadn't been for this place. And again, all kudos to the original builders of structures like this and the Hoover Dam that had its original floors, windows were broken and things like that, but it wasn't like the building shifted and moved off. It's because of that really bound this with the community and enabled it to be a centerpiece. I would not have said, back then, I would not have said that would have been a good thing, but it truly was. And then that was what propelled and moved where it was then President Clinton in 94 that decided the first Summit of the Americas would be held right here at the Biltmore.
I want to ask just a quick question. I want to go back to you, because this is really an important question. Everybody watching, please listen carefully. When the contractors and stuff are saying the Biltmore, what I want to know is it was kind of an interesting crew that was coming in. You probably had to take in all kinds of people. Were the pool like people like NASCAR race, like jumping in the pool? And you had to be like a little redneck. They come from like, right? So what was come on, the dark side? Like what was going on?
You had all types.
Right, you had to catch all kinds of stuff happening.
And plus you had animals. You had, it was a bit of the Wild West.
One story, come on, remember one crazy story that happened. Well, right, what is a wild story? Imagine, think about all these people come like you had these, you took in everybody. Come on, one wild story, something you had to deal with.
At one point, there was a snake swimming in the pool. Not a small snake, too. Maybe that's a precursor to the anacondas now that are in the Everglades. But like, I just watching, the difference. It was a view into what America kind of is, because you had the Hispanic community, all those diverse backgrounds. Then you had people that came from the surrounding, areas, the gringos. You had different socioeconomic, status of people. So you had some people that had never really, they kind of were like, I don't understand what this is. What's that? It was a cross section of America.
It was, ladies of the night probably coming in here from all kinds of stuff.
Well, yeah, because you had day workers, so you naturally had everything that came here. I'm just surprised that we didn't have more problems, meaning, drugs or things like that. But because there was such a heavy police and National Guard presence, I think that's what stemmed.
It was wild, man.
But
it was like a
Carl
Hyacin book.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I can see that.
Right. So I'm glad that was important. Right now, back to you. I just wanted to make sure everybody heard that one. Right?
How involved were you at that time?
No, not very involved. Not like that. I was just thinking to myself, okay, well, there goes, any hope for anything else we want to do as a family. We had other properties at the time, and those were in different parts of the state and up north. But I really thought that it would have been the death knell, and it wasn't. It turned out not to be.
When did you start getting?
Well, I'd always been involved as an officer of the company, and even when I was up north, coming down periodically, but participating in a number of the high-level decisions and discussions because of the fact that I knew I wanted to be involved and where I could lend assistance with guidance, thoughts. I did. I was successful in procuring, actually, through the Department of Interior, much needed funds that went towards part of the restoration.
Oh, you were involved with that?
I was.
Because I remember, I'm not going to jab, you kind of man, no, I'm kidding. But
that was at the state
We
level.
were involved. That was with Alex.
I actually procured what they call an earmark, or they say pork, but an earmark that went towards just the restoration for the cupola and the tower that was damaged. And that was, again, back in a time where I took members of Congress down here. I took them up into this area to show them what it was. We needed the Army Corps of Engineers to evacuate water in the structural columns because it was in the cavities. All of those type of things that were, you wouldn't just think of that when you look at a building like this, but it was required. And the federal government, to their credit, recognized this is a historic landmark, one of the few in South Florida. We need to preserve it. So let us do our part.
And I think that people think, and we always talk about this, that you own it. It's a lease from I think that's an important thing because people make the wrong impression. They're here taking a money grab. It's not the case. In fact, the Biltmore, your dad, you lost a long time. This was not an easy, like anybody who has
Not on my watch.
Right, exactly. Sorry, excuse me, right. But anybody sane would never take, I'm serious. Like this was also a commitment to the community. I think that, so why don't we talk, I think it's important. And let me let me finish like for a moment what I'm saying is because, the outside world sometimes comes in general, thinks, we live in a world of black and white. Look at these guys, this big hotel. This is not easy. This was somebody and a family and your dad who said he had fell in love with this place. It wasn't necessarily a sane, rational decision. So talk about that side of it because you all really, this is a commitment to a community and to a building. So.
No, look, in the beginning, this was not a moneymaker. This was a large investment, and it continued to be an investment for a number of years. And frankly, I spend more here on annual capital expenditures than I do at our other property because it just requires that. It's got a larger footprint. We sit on 154 acres of land, if you include the golf course, but it's a historic structure. Behind us, we have 1925 brick. You don't just replace that, with a modern brick in the traditional sense. That's where historic preservation comes in, and that balance of finding it between the two. From a business standpoint, I would have been surprised had it not been for some of the events that transpired, as I mentioned earlier, if it would have been a business of going concern.
Was there a specific crisis or every adversity you guys have gone through here that gave you the biggest wisdom or learning?
No, the hurricane was probably gave my father more wisdom in that regard, since it was under his direct charge at that time. I have had my own challenges, but it's the story, whatever. It doesn't kill you, makes you stronger, but you learn through those things. My recent entanglements, if you will, with aspects of historic preservation, and you work through those, and they give you perspective on how to approach such things, both with those people that are there. It's not, but one thing I always remind everybody is, my politician friends are going to give me a hard time about this. Politicians come and go. The landmark remains, and it'll long outlive all of us here in this room and everybody else.
Let me say this though, with the entanglements and stuff, because I've watched and you are somebody that truly has evolved. And I also watch one thing, you've gained respect. It's a lot of times these entanglements happen, and here it's even more complex because the community, and there's like this animosity always hangs with you. Like, you've earned a lot of respect from people who they see that you're a real person. Sometimes I think people weren't used to you being so direct. That was a bit, but I think, and this is my perspective, I'm saying I see that in this community. Also, you're going to be challenged because your dad, it's not your dad. So somebody new comes in a sense to them, and they're going to challenge you a bit. But I think that you've earned great respect from those people.
I'd like to hope so. Look, I'm the first to tell you, my father's a lot nicer than me. And
100%.
I'm not saying that to be funny.
But you're just as different.
No. And again, part of that is because of the background that we have. And then I have the legal aspect as well. And so I will question things. I will say, well, I don't understand why. Whereas my father would just simply say, okay, I'll do this, I'll do that.
Right.
I think that at times he was taken advantage of as a result of that. And I'm just not going to let that stuff fly. So I challenge people and I ask, well, why? But at the end of the day, what I think, going to your point as to why people hopefully respect me in that regard, is because they know that my end goal is the betterment of the Biltmore. And it really is.
And the community.
Community goes hand in hand.
I know it, but I think that's important. And I will say this about your dad. I know I'm getting off tangent, but just one thing, because you're talking about your dad. Look, I think sometimes, though, we say take advantage of your dad, right? It's different. Like, for example, we talked about this. He's so, wants the community to do well. And it was a different time, right? When we were, and so even not-for-profits that weren't paying their bills, look, if you think about it, come on, you had people, they're great people, but just kind of the expectation that we're just not going to, we can't pay it, and your dad would be so nice about it. Look, it's amazing, the kindness, but it's not necessarily conducive to.
That'd be fine if we didn't have to pay our bills.
That's what I'm saying.
We didn't have to do
that's my point. So when you're saying he kind of knew what he was doing, he just felt he was torn.
And I get it, and that's what I mean by. Whereas I would say, you understand.
Right.
I have to keep the lights on. You understand. Exactly. I have close to 700 people that work here. We have a requirement and a duty by which to provide, which then benefits the community. It benefits the community on the fact that when we're successful, not only is the community successful financially, but it is a positive multiplier kind of effect that they get. So that is why it's important. But when I asked those questions in the beginning of when I first got here, that was a bit unnerving for people. They were so used to my father, they would just be like, okay, that's fine. And I was like, well, that's, I didn't say there's a new sheriff in town. I just simply said, I'm sorry, but that's not the way we're going to do this.
And the world's changed, obviously, communities, etc. Anyhow, right.
Tell me a little bit about the dynamic between you both. I mean, especially, first of all, talking about tenures, everyone that comes in any type of administration, organization, business, takes something to a certain level. And you hope that they do it, and Gene did it amazingly. And now you're there, and because of there, you're saying, okay, now I have the ability to focus on all of these things, which I personally see as the biggest opportunity now for Biltmore, the community, the city. And then in between all of that is the dynamic of a father and a son. So how?
Well, I'm not, while the old joke is
speaking, guys, I'm sorry, I hope you can edit this part
out.
Sorry, guys, you'll edit this part out. Yes. I'm okay. Go ahead.
Okay. It's a hard act to follow at this point, but I'm going to try. I, as a father of sons, I joke around and say, well, sons are on this earth to trouble their fathers. And there's probably a little bit of truth to that. But I was very fortunate because dad was great in all respects. He was always supportive of me in any manner of whatever I was wanting to do or focus on. When it was about coming down here and basically following in his footsteps, I needed obviously a learning curve. You don't just come in overnight and do that. He had built something that is beyond impressive. I'm not just saying that again because he's my father, but I look at him as one of the titans in that regard, especially in South Florida. And he earned all of those accolades entirely on his own. He didn't have help. He just charged forward. So I had to learn through some of those things, and I would question, well, why did you do it that way? Why did you choose to do it this way? And he would always be patient with me. It wasn't like
He would be patient.
very patient. I mean, he's more patient with my kids and his grandkids now than he was with me, but that's all right. That's the way I know it has to be. But when we finally got to the point where he was comfortable, he said, okay, you just call me if you need me. And he's never once, and I've heard this from other friends that have been in family businesses where the patriarch doesn't tend to leave, kind of is like still there, doesn't know what to do. Dad has been extremely supportive in that regard. He has never once come in and undercut things that I'm doing. And I do consult him often. I value his opinion on things. And he's like, just let me know when you need me or anything like that. And so I joke around because I said, all the politicians and everybody loves you, so I can always bring you there. And they all joke with me now.
True, right?
They all joke with me now. And they're like, did you bring your dad because you want something? It's very funny. And that's great. He earned it. And I'm very grateful and I'm fortunate to have that.
And once you saw the platform of where it's come, what are the opportunities that you immediately see? It's like, now I want to do this. Now that we're here, I have the ability to focus on that. This is where I see value. This is where I want to go.
So the first one was the golf course. Golf had not yet taken off to the way that it has today. Now, partly, and I could have never planned for this, COVID added a huge boost to that. We had to shut during the COVID period for a little bit of time when Carlos Jimenez was our county mayor. It was very funny because I remember the movie Contagion, and then to see that actually result in real life was somewhat stunning. But, we closed. We closed for, I think it was 3.5 weeks a month. And then the first thing that reopened was golf. And we had made a focus on golf. And we had said, we want to develop that. It wasn't just me, it was others. I mean, my father was a part of those discussions. But that helped create the foundation by which the golf has now been arguably the most successful. Then a confluence of subsequent events transpired.
So that was a course upgrade, the restaurant?
Yes, we restored the course to its original Donald Ross design. We added back bunkers. We added, different greens, the sloping, everything that had changed over the years. And my father is not a golfer. He never has been. No. So that wasn't an area of focus. But again, it wasn't really an area of focus for the hotel. A lot of hotels would focus on, you want to get people in rooms. Doesn't matter anything else. Well, that's not really great. Use the complementing offerings that you have on property to benefit the overall imagery. So that was one area. The other was, I firmly believe that we needed to improve all of our F&B operations, the outlets, the offerings, both in banquets and everything else. And because people want new things. Yes, they want what they're comfortable with. Yes, they want the consistency of great food and great service, but you need to evolve from just having the things that you only have always done. One of the things that drives me the most nuts, so none of my team will say this to me now, is that, well, that's just the way we've always done it, so why shouldn't we continue it? And I'm like, no, we can't. And that's proven to me to be the right approach, given the amount of new inventory coming on the market throughout South Florida when it went through its boom, of the construction phase. You must be innovative. You must be forward thinking. You must do stuff that has a tie to the past. It doesn't abandon your principles or your character, but it provides something that is unique. Without saying where we are, this room is one of those things.
Otherwise, how do you keep a century-old hotel feeling alive for the new generation?
Correct.
You have to.
Correct. And that is the challenge, because I might have a thought that going this route and refreshing in a certain way, you are, destroying the legacy and, all of those. Finding that balance is the challenge.
Can I have a few questions, but I want, if you're on a certain path, because me, I get off.
Just one last
thing.
Yeah,
exactly why I said that. Right.
Last thing in this loop is is there a particular thing that you're most proud of the efforts that you've already kind of completed?
So I take great pride in all of the builds that we've done. The golf building, we actually rebuilt entirely. It is now a full golf building. By that, it means it houses our membership. It has a brand new restaurant. It has a golf pro shop.
I love the new
That
restaurant
was
there,
a
by the
big-
way.
You love golf. Did you get free golf for life here? You said, right? Is that right? Okay.
Oh, who said that?
Right. Did you say what?
We just went over.
Right.
You don't take advantage of it.
Oh, that's right.
Okay?
I
Let's
never
put it
have
down.
actually.
Not you.
Oh,
I'm saying
God,
in
thank you. Just to
general.
be clear, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. No. Oh, you're saying. Oh, I got. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Right.
So that is one thing I'm particularly proud of. I mean, look, at the end of the day, though, the success, I can build and create all of these great venues. The people is what's key. So we've evolved through, and we have a mixture. We have people that have worked with us for 30 years. We have about 25 of them that have worked with us for over 20 years. We have generations of families in here. My greatest pride is that I can tell you, so we're a little bit under 700 employees here. I mean, think about that. The city of Coral Gables government is 1,200 people. We're 700. In that background, if that's a combination, full-time, part-time, golf, on-calls, everything. We have 46 countries represented as backgrounds with our team members. That, to me, is one of the great success stories that doesn't get talked about. Because I know the focus up north is, illegal immigration and all that kind of stuff. By the way, every single one-minded people is all legal. I just want to be clear.
Right, exactly,
they are
right.
all legal.
Right.
I've personally looked at all the I-9 forms and everything. Personally.
But first generation is great. It's amazing the
It's
support,
great.
right?
The other
So
thing that
right.
we have here, and I think this is a great thing for the trajectory of families, is that we have a number of people that we do a partnership with FIU. So we have a lot of graduates, and we do internship programs and University of Miami as well. But it's more FIU just because their program is more robust in hospitality. Nothing against University of Miami, and to watch people graduate when their families, first gen, it changes the trajectory of those families, the lineage of those families. And that's fantastic. And we can say that we participated and had a part in that.
And I think what a lot of people don't realize is how much the Biltmore is the sea and the stage for the community. Weddings, parties.
Yeah.
How many people have tithed?
Bar mitzvahs, all of it. Hey,
It's
how
the
you
best,
doing?
Chris,
Right.
the best.
Hold my finger. Right.
So we do anywhere between 100 and 110 weddings a year. The two preeminent spots are, we feel, us and the Breakers. Breakers is a great
By the way,
property.
that's 2 a week.
Can
at
be.
least.
Yeah, we've had one time where we had 5 weddings in a given weekend. Now that's tough on my team. They are turning rooms. They are running like crazy. We started doing more Indian weddings, and once you do one,
really?
I
That's
noticed that
interesting.
we start to do
very
more.
cool.
We learned from that too, because the first Indian wedding we had here,
Oh, I saw one on
The,
social media.
yeah.
It looked outstanding.
yeah, but the first one we did, the groom rode in on an elephant, and then PETA
Oh.
attacked us for a year, even though that elephant was going on its way to, I guess, the
But Indian community is
plantation.
very they love animals. They take
Yeah.
care of. They support.
It was
right.
just
And,
they
like-
it nothing to do with us,
Right,
but
exactly.
nevertheless. So there's no more elephants that
You
come
can
on
please some
property.
other people some
You
other
can have
time.
horses, you can have other things, but it's just letting you know
Okay.
that was a learning experience. We didn't know that was going to be
just snake
problematic.
swimming in pools. That's fine, right? No.
But so we focus on weddings, like you said, and it can be, remember that it can be 2 a weekend, it can be 3 a weekend, but it can be a small intimate wedding. It can be a 15-person wedding
Sure.
to a 350-person wedding. It just depends. But we've done everything from the most lavish wedding for people that happen to be in New York, I think, was one of the most lavish ones we've had. They did multiple sites around. It was written up. It was 2 celebrities. It's that kind of stuff that you can get, all the way down to people that, if they're willing to take the plunge, we want to be there to give them the memory.
So I wanted to go, and I know we don't have that much time, but there's something I did want to talk about for a moment. Sure. We're going to go totally different. It's about your dad. Sure. And I know there's a couple things, and you know that I'm very close to your father, and I love him very much. We love each other. We have, he's special to me. And I know, though, that also as a child, it's not easy, right? You talked about, half joking, but serious, right? Being any father, any child where a father has such huge projects, right? Sometimes it was difficult, feeling like you weren't getting enough, right, attention and focusing.
Well, you cited that in the beginning,
Yeah, and
a
I
joke
wanted-
that I had told you
Right,
once
but it's
before.
it's reality.
It is. I mean, look, I didn't truly understand, and again, this comes with age and perspective and wisdom, as I like to say, which I remind my sons. My daughter's too young to yet have these conversations with my sons. Listen, like, I promise you, I'm trying to help you here. I'm trying to, give you guidance and things like that. Don't be stubborn just to prove your old man wrong. And I did some of that with my dad, but I do remember being somewhat upset because he would give himself to this building. It became like his non-biological child. I didn't understand that at the time as to why. So as I finally came here and saw that, even though I only live 4 blocks away, I come here very
Smartly,
often.
you decided not to live like your dad. It was very,
No. But, it can, consume you if you're not careful, because this doesn't close.
And you, I have one more question to follow, but before I even get to that question, it's very important you to try to be at your kids' game, like to all that stuff.
Oh,
right? You've talked about that. So, and that's every generation. So what do you do to try to make sure that you don't fall with your own children? Because you talked to me about that.
When I first had children, again, my oldest is 17 years old. In the beginning, when I'm like, well, Dad, I need to go because I got to go, he was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I get it. You didn't come to all of my games, and that's fine, but it's important for us. And that, I think, is a generational thing.
Yeah.
So he had difficulty with accepting that. What do you mean? When I was born, I remember my mom told me the story. I mean, he came to the hospital, saw me, and then went right back to work. I mean, that's what that generation
That's also that generation, of course.
So all of his contemporaries and his friends had similar stories.
Yeah.
Again, they're highly successful, so I give them all the credit in the world, but I would never miss my kids' stuff. Never.
What changed things for me was changing from the philosophy of balance to counterbalance. Sure. It's like the idea that you can do it all every single day, sure. I mean, you can be very disciplined and so on, but the reality is there's times that something is going to take a lot from you. Yeah. And then eventually that can counterbalance to then doing more with your kids and family. But projects, if you're really at it like you are and your father have been, sometimes you got to give it your all.
Yeah. But I want to, I'm like on this is something that, the reason I'm about to ask this question is because I think both of you know how much I'm fortunate to have great relationships in this community that are emotional and personal, and your dad's one of them. And I know that you're also somebody that has big heart, and I shouldn't tell people that, right? If you try to take advantage of not paying a bill, but all joking aside, and so I tend to get very upset when I see people taking advantage of people and this and that. And I know that, I mean, you know how protective I am. I'm not somebody that, if I know my friend's being taken advantage of, it's not going to end up very well. But how did that feel watching? Because I know, look, we both know there are times when your dad was taken advantage of, and he kind of just acquiesced, and he's been through personal, without getting into his personal stories, but you've seen, and I have seen, we know stuff that other people may not. How does that feel? Like, I mean, as a son, emotionally.
It didn't feel good, and I pointed that out to him, and then I would, when I got to the place that I could, I would actually approach some of those people directly, and I was like, that stuff is done. And at first it bothered Dad. I was like, no, but I think that he recognized that in the end, that was better for him, better for our business. And so, but yeah, of course that's irritating. You never want to see that. Speaking of George W. Bush, I remember him saying, and again, you look back now at the first Gulf War and you're just kind of like, it seems like so long ago, people don't even know. But I remember Bush saying, listen, talking about Saddam Hussein, even again, not getting into, did he trump up charges of WMD and any of that? None of that. I remember him saying once, hell, the guy threatened my dad. Resonated with me. George W. Bush resonated with me. I understood that.
Yeah. No. So I know that also, I've watched, your dad's a wonderful human being with a big heart. And so I will say this, and people like your dad who I'm close to, although we're not going to talk about some of those things, we both know that there's been people that haven't been so nice to a lot of, and it's taught me not to really be around those people. And that's what I learned, not just from him, from other friends of mine. And I choose not to, they don't need to know, but I choose not to change the way I view.
Yeah. You remember the old saying, it was LBJ, right? That said that in Washington, for instance, if you want a friend, get a dog.
Right.
Down here in Miami, you get a lot of people that are trying to advance their own interests, and it's not great. And I agree that it's better to just stay clear of those films.
And let's just, as we move on, say this, there's also amazing, right? Think about it, the amazing relationships too that exist. And so we're lucky. That's why we're doing this, to show that. And I think that, anyway, it's just a love thing. And my point was that we have to look out for the people that we love.
I agree.
And that being a son, also seeing that.
Oh yeah, but it's important. You rally behind your friends at times of success.
Yep.
And you also rally behind them in times of struggling, when they're struggling. That's the definition of a friend.
Was always there for me.
And he would. No, but I mean, he is again, I'm not just saying this because he's my father. He's one of those type of people, and he instilled that with us and his kids, which I try to do with mine.
Okay, so we're close to wrap up.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, I got wrapped
One thing that I wanted to touch on before Fred takes us home. Centennial.
Yes.
We're getting to 100 years. The Prescott family has stewarded this for 30?
For 1/3 of it, yep.
1/3. What's the plan?
So the city itself, the city of Coral Gables, is already in its centennial year, if you will. Because the hotel broke ground to build it on March 13th, 1925. It opened 10 months later. They didn't have to deal with permits or, all that stuff that we have to deal with today. So come January 15th, 2026, that will be the actual opening day, 100 years to the day.
Oh, wow.
So that is our centennial that we are focused on because we are leading up to that, and it's going to be a grand celebration, recreating much of that fanfare and everything. To say that it's going to be akin to a Gatsby party and a Gatsby type of theme doesn't do it justice. It's to really focus on making this the center, again, of South Florida for the 2 days in which we're going to do celebrations.
Any sneak peek? No. We'll keep it on the wraps.
It will be nothing you've seen in South Florida as far as I can tell. You can have it on a much smaller scale on South Beach and a number of the other places and clubs and do that. To do it on the grand scale that we are going to be doing things will be
that's already in motion. Something that big.
Of course.
I can't wait. I mean, we're going to be all over this thing, by the way, right? What do I get to dress up as, right?
Remember, we'll look back at the day. It'll be black tie. You don't need to wear.
Oh, no, I thought it was like a carnival. Oh, okay. Oh.
There might be a carnival theme too. It's hard to say, Fred.
There's something that this is a complicated community, right? We see people who grew up here and now we say we're a victim of our own success. Part of this community don't always it's hard. It's hard to survive here. And there's a balance between tourism and local. Now, we never know what can happen to Miami-Dade. Things will change. You're also focused on the local, right? Making stronger ties and making this hotel part of the local community, correct? So
100%. No, look, we have the benefit of the fact that we have a number of memberships. We have a golf membership. We have a fitness membership. Those members, 95% of them live within a 3-mile radius. They make this somewhat of a community center in that regard. It's more than just, a membership. Yes, we have global clients coming from every continent except for Antarctica, but we are still, at the end of the day, a local landmark. And just today, I was at the South Hispanic Chamber lunch. They, like the Latin Builders Association, all the other groups that have come through this past week, they all bring their events here for 2 reasons. One, to be supportive of us because we've always been supportive of them. They love the venue because there's also that old world feel, but modern amenities within it. So again, going back to that, have a luxury property in a historic property. It's something that's a challenge, but we work on it. That local community, that local business community is what enables us to be successful. And we have to continue to cultivate that and move forward.
So I love LB. I sat on the board for a long time, by the way. But moving forward, any room to expand nightlife at Drop, to make it a little more? Since I mean, there's an opportunity there.
So our bars, we have 2 bars downstairs, and one of the bars we've actually instituted some music on, Friday and Saturday nights, which I've seen because people asked for it. So we said, let's try it. It's not my cup of tea, but it is for a group of regulars that now come for the music.
Right, exactly. Right.
And that's great. The other bar is
I'll have to become one of those regulars.
It is interesting to see. It's stuff we haven't seen before, which is kind of nice. The different groups at the golf, and they do their own kind of small little things and everything else. And that's great. Look, we're in Miami, right? You can go and you can have everything of every genre of any type of scene out, whether it be a single bar or a club or something more. We try to provide offerings that are unique to us. Sure. Their character is still consistent with us, but the future is bright. There are more things that will be coming for the Biltmore down the road.
For someone that's done so much for the city, for the community, yourself and the family, what would you like its residents to do to give back?
Well, look, Coral Gables is an interesting...
And I don't mean to the hotel.
Yeah. No, I understand what you mean.
A lot of money.
Well, Coral Gables is an interesting community in the sense that they do feel, and that I take it more as a sense of pride, that this is their building. And to your point, Fred, it arguably is, right? It was conveyed from the federal government to the city of Coral Gables. We're the stewards of it. It will still outlast all of us and the current crop of politicians and everyone else. But they feel a sense of pride for that. Sometimes that can be a little bit misguided in the sense of they will come and say, well, you should do it this way, thinking that that's the only thing that appeals to everybody else in the world. And that's just not the reality of the situation. So thinking in bigger picture terms is what I would say I would love for the community to always do. And I'm not saying that they don't have that ability or they don't do it at times, but there are other times where they go and they just will nitpick on something that they don't need to. And again, my door is always open. I like my father and frankly, like the local mayor, Vince Lago. I've said, call me anytime. It's not like I'm going to sit there and be like, nope, I can't talk to you. On the contrary, I solicit, I want those opinions. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to do all of them, but I want to hear them. We do not have a monopoly on the best ideas. I'm the first to tell you that. But they can't think that their ideas are the only thing that matters and that there's nothing else that would be better, especially if some of them, have never been to other parts of the world. And I'm like, yeah, but you understand that if we just do this, we will alienate a whole other. We need to be cross-section, open, and so forth.
Total sense.
So in closing,
Yes, sir.
I didn't write something today like I do sometimes, just going to throw it out there.
You're going to wing it, huh?
Well, yeah, I am. I want to say, first of all, thank you, man. And with all sincerity, your family is phenomenally important to me, as you know. I won't cry this time. Maybe I will. Let's see. Can I make
No,
myself
only
cry?
my father gets.
But no, but really, I mean, it's very important to me, man. I respect, obviously, your dad, his family, and you. I've grown to love you very quick time, and we just really got to know each other. But truly, I know. But I feel I love you, man, and thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for really making this commitment to the community, because it is a commitment. You could go back to Virginia and live that chill life and be a bureaucrat but you're choosing.
I made a lot more money when I was up north.
Yeah,
I
I
can
know.
promise you that. This is not.
People don't get that. They think, right, of course. But I want to say, look, thank you, man. Thank you for what you're doing. I think on behalf of both of us, we could say we really have grown very fond of you, right? There's no way. I mean, very quickly. We're looking forward to doing whatever together, community oriented, whatever. We're here to help. We want to be a part of what you're doing. We love you, man. He knows.
Well, the people, I will say, if I may, the people that you guys have had on your other episodes, you talk about leaders that shape the community, my father being one of them. You want to build on that. You don't want to go backwards. You want to build on that. And so I view that as one of my principal requirements, like other businesses in the area. So I take to heart what you say, but it's because of those people, those leaders, those visionaries, you build on that. So
we love you, Ben. We're going to grow up together. Yes. We're going to be spending a lot of time with you. And I know, thank you for giving the unknown number callbacks. I appreciate that. But all joking aside, thanks, man. Thanks for doing this. No, thanks for everything you've done. And we love you, man. Thank you, oh my God. Wow. Thank you, honey.
Good.
All right.